my friends. The point isn't to be paranoid, it's to be proactive. Love doesn't happen by accident. It's protected through awareness, humility, communication, and inner work. If you're in a relationship worth keeping, don't just defend each other, defend what you're building. Because the enemy isn't just after your partner or your peace, it's after your purpose. And that is worth fighting for. The enemy in your relationship is often not the person across from you, but something more insidious. It's the invisible patterns that shape how you interact with one another. These patterns are born from the unspoken fears, unresolved issues, and emotional baggage that both of you bring into the relationship. When we talk about the enemy working to destroy a relationship, we're not always talking about a person. Sometimes the biggest threat comes in the form of habits, beliefs, or emotions that work quietly and consistently beneath the surface. It's important to recognize that in many cases, we're not actively choosing these behaviors. They've been ingrained over time, often without us realizing it. And when they're left unaddressed, they slowly chip away at the foundation of our connection with our partner. For example, the way that fear can show up in a relationship. Fear is a powerful force. It has a way of infiltrating even the most loving of partnerships. Fear often begins in small, almost unnoticeable moments, like when one partner withdraws emotionally because they're scared of being rejected or hurt. Fear might manifest as jealousy, where you start questioning your partner's loyalty, not because of anything they've done, but because your past experiences have led you to believe that betrayal is inevitable. This fear can morph into suspicion, emotional withdrawal, or even the impulse to control. None of these things are inherently malicious, but they create distance between two people who should be working toward closeness and mutual trust. The enemy doesn't need to show up with a face, it just needs fear to take root. There's insecurity. This is another form of the enemy that often works behind the scenes, undetected but deeply impactful. Insecurity can cause one partner to constantly seek validation from the other, asking for reassurance even when it's unnecessary, or perhaps assuming that their worth is dependent on external approval. Over time, this kind of behavior can create an imbalance, with one partner feeling like they can never do enough to satisfy the other. It breeds frustration on both sides. The partner who feels the constant need for validation may feel like they can't do anything right, while the other might start feeling emotionally drained and overwhelmed. What starts as a small insecurity can quickly evolve into a huge wedge between two people who once shared mutual love and respect. Even beyond personal fears and insecurities, the patterns we inherit from our past can shape the way we behave in a relationship. These might be childhood patterns or patterns formed from previous relationships. If we grew up in an environment where love was conditional or inconsistent, we may unconsciously recreate that environment in our adult relationships. This might look like self-sabotage, where you push someone away before they can hurt you, or it could show up as an overreaction to something seemingly minor because it touches a deeper wound. These old wounds, though they may have been formed in the past, are still actively shaping how we see and react to the person we love. This is the subtle nature of the enemy. It's not a villain wearing a cloak of evil. It's a subtle force that gets woven into your every interaction until one day you wake up and wonder how loving connection has started to fray. The enemy doesn't want to destroy your relationship in an obvious way. It doesn't want a dramatic breakup or conflict that's easy to spot. No, the enemy's true strength lies in its ability to work quietly, to shift your mindset so that every little thing becomes an issue. You might find yourself questioning your partner's every action, interpreting neutral or even loving gestures as signs of neglect or indifference. Or you might start assuming that your partner doesn't understand you because you've stopped communicating your needs clearly, in part because of the negative patterns that have started to shape your behavior. The good news, however, is that this enemy is not invincible. It thrives when we ignore it, when we refuse to acknowledge the subtle forces that shape our behavior. But when we become aware of these patterns, when we recognize them for what they are, we can begin to challenge them. Awareness is the first step toward change. We can choose to address our fears, our insecurities, and our past wounds instead of letting them control us. We can choose to communicate openly with our partner about what we're feeling instead of letting assumptions and misunderstandings build up. We can choose to nurture the positive patterns in our relationship and allow them to flourish rather than letting negative behaviors fester. It's important to remember that relationships aren't perfect. They require work, commitment, and vulnerability. But that vulnerability, when practiced with intention and awareness, is what keeps the enemy at bay. The true enemy is not a person or a particular situation, but the unresolved issues we carry within ourselves and the patterns we don't challenge. If we want to protect our relationship, we have to be willing to face the enemy, not with blame or fear, but with understanding and openness. Only then can we build a connection that's strong enough to withstand anything that comes its way. When two people come together in a relationship, they don't just bring their love for one another. They bring their histories, their wounds, their patterns, and their baggage. This merging of lives creates a unique dynamic where two individuals not only discover the beauty of being together, but also face the vulnerability of exposing their most raw and real selves. Love is beautiful, but it's also demanding. And while it can be one of the most fulfilling experiences, it can also bring up a lot of unresolved issues, fears, and past hurts that were previously buried. When these deeper layers start to surface, they can threaten to destabilize a relationship that was once full of warmth and joy. The enemy doesn't need to destroy the relationship through overt attacks. Instead, it encourages you to retreat into old familiar patterns of emotional guarding. It whispers in your ear that you're safer keeping your emotions hidden, that showing your true feelings is a sign of weakness or insecurity. This mindset begins to erode the trust and connection you once had with your partner. The more you pull away, the more the bond weakens. As you protect yourself from emotional exposure, the relationship begins to feel less like a partnership and more like two individuals living side by side, but not fully engaged with one another. The walls go up, and the love you share begins to feel more like a routine than a connection. However, it's not just in retreating emotionally. It's in how this lack of emotional vulnerability can breed resentment and frustration. When you stop showing up fully for your partner, when you stop letting them see the real you, flaws and all, you may start to feel disconnected, misunderstood, or even lonely in the relationship. The enemy loves this feeling of isolation because it begins to plant seeds of doubt. Maybe we're not meant to be together. Maybe they don't love me the way I thought they did. Maybe this relationship is too hard and I should just give up. These thoughts feed on the absence of emotional intimacy. And before you know it, you're caught in a cycle of suspicion, frustration, and even bitterness. The paradox is that intimacy, the very thing that the enemy tries to sabotage, is the key to overcoming these challenges. The more emotionally intimate you are with your partner, the more you create a space where both of you can show up as your true selves without fear of judgment or rejection. When you are open and vulnerable, you not only allow your partner to see you more clearly, but you also give them the opportunity to meet your emotional needs in a way that feels deeply fulfilling. This level of closeness fosters trust, understanding, and compassion, the very antidote to the forces that seek to divide you. Vulnerability doesn't mean being reckless or emotionally needy. It's not about dumping every fear, insecurity, or emotion on your partner without consideration. Vulnerability is about being honest, being open about your feelings, and being willing to work through difficulties together, with the understanding that both of you are committed to each other's emotional growth and well-being. It's about sharing your truth in a way that invites connection and understanding, not demands reassurance or validation. True emotional intimacy is built over time, through moments of openness and honesty that deepen the trust and affection you have for one another. Many people avoid vulnerability because they fear rejection or feel unworthy of love. This is where the enemy's true power lies, in convincing you that your partner will never love you as you truly are. It whispers, if you let them see the real you, they'll leave. It tells you you're not good enough, you'll never be worthy of someone's full love and attention. These thoughts are often the result of deep-seated insecurities that have nothing to do with the present relationship, but stem from past experiences. When we believe these lies, we put up emotional walls to protect ourselves. But the irony is that those walls are the very thing that separates us from the love and connection we crave. By choosing to embrace vulnerability, by choosing to show up fully, even when it feels scary or uncomfortable, you invite your partner to do the same. You create a space where both of you can grow together face challenges head on, and build a deeper connection. The enemy's goal is to keep you from this connection, to make you believe that staying guarded is the safest route. But the truth is that real safety is found in love, in trust, and in the willingness to be open and vulnerable with someone who genuinely cares for you. And when you choose vulnerability, you choose growth, connection, and a love that is truly fulfilling. The true battle in any relationship often takes place long before conflict arises between you and your partner. It's a battle of the mind, where old beliefs, unhealed wounds, and unprocessed emotions dictate how we perceive our partner's actions and how we respond to them. We often think that relationship issues stem from miscommunication, disagreements over trivial things, or different values. But what if I told you that the root of most relationship struggles starts within your own mind? It's not the external problems that cause the most damage. It's the internal ones. When we come into a relationship, we bring not only our love, but also our histories, our insecurities, and our perceptions, all of which are heavily influenced by how we think and what we believe about ourselves, our partner, and the relationship itself. Many people aren't even aware of the subtle yet powerful effect that their inner dialogue has on their relationship. For instance, how many times have you misinterpreted something your partner said or did simply because of your own insecurities or fears? Maybe they didn't text back right away and your mind starts racing with thoughts like, they're upset with me, they don't care about me, or I'm not good enough. You create an entire story in your head, one that's based on assumptions, not facts. Your partner may be busy, distracted, or simply not thinking about the situation in the same way, but your mind, operating on old patterns and unresolved fears, leads you to believe that their actions are a reflection of how they feel about you, when in reality, they may have nothing to do with you at all. This is where the real danger lies. Our minds can quickly turn what could be a minor misunderstanding into a full-blown conflict simply because we're projecting our own fears and insecurities onto our partner. The enemy in this scenario is not the partner, it's the negative thought patterns we've carried with us, often for years. These thoughts, often rooted in past experiences or childhood wounds, shape how we see ourselves and how we view our relationship. If we don't address them, they can take over our perception and skew our understanding of reality. In the worst case scenario, this causes a cycle where we're constantly reading into every action or word, seeing problems where there may not be any. This cycle of overthinking, assumption, and misinterpretation is a subtle but powerful force that undermines the connection we have with our partner. But it doesn't stop there. The enemy also works by causing us to focus too much on our partner's behavior rather than looking inward at our own emotional triggers. For example, if you find yourself getting upset when your partner doesn't meet your needs or fails to say the right thing, it's important to ask why you feel so strongly about it. Are you disappointed because they didn't show affection in the way you expected? Or is it because you have an underlying belief that you're not worthy of affection, and so when it doesn't come the way you want, you feel invalidated? The enemy will have you pointing fingers, blaming your partner for not fulfilling your emotional needs. But the truth is that often those needs are tied to beliefs and patterns from your past. You might have learnt from previous relationships or even from your family that love looks a certain way, and when it doesn't come in that form, you feel hurt or rejected. The tendency is often to focus on what the other person is doing wrong, but rarely do we stop to reflect on how our own beliefs and thought patterns might be contributing to the problem. When we can't separate our past experiences and personal insecurities from the present reality, we are not only misunderstanding our partner's actions, but also failing to take responsibility for our own reactions. The enemy uses this unawareness to keep us trapped in cycles of miscommunication and frustration. It convinces us that the problem is always out there with our partner rather than within ourselves. But self-awareness and personal growth are the keys to breaking this cycle. Here's the truth. To move beyond this, you have to start by understanding how your own mind works in the context of the relationship. When you begin to notice how your own fears, insecurities, and assumptions are shaping your perceptions, you can start to take control of your emotional responses. It's not about denying your feelings, but about recognizing that your feelings, especially the negative ones, are often influenced by things that are not your partner's fault. By becoming aware of this, you can learn to separate the facts of the situation from the stories your mind is telling you. You can learn to ask, is this really happening, or am I reacting to something from my past? By pausing and challenging those automatic thoughts, you can begin to see your partner's actions for what they truly are, rather than through the lens of your own fears or emotional triggers. One of the most powerful tools you have in protecting your relationship from the destructive effects of this mental battle is open communication. When you're feeling triggered or upset, it's easy to retreat into your own mind and make assumptions about what your partner is thinking or feeling. But instead of falling into that trap, take a step back and talk it out. Express your feelings and concerns in a way that invites understanding rather than defensiveness. For example, instead of saying, "You never text me back," "You don't care," try saying, "I feel insecure when I don't hear from you, and it makes me wonder if everything's okay between us." This shifts the focus from blame to self-awareness and opens up a conversation where both partners can share their thoughts and feelings without fear of judgment. The mental battle isn't always easy to win, but the key to overcoming it is developing the ability to recognize when your mind is hijacking the situation and to take responsibility for your own reactions. By doing so, you not only protect your own emotional well-being, but you also create space for deeper understanding and connection with your partner. In the end, the true strength of a relationship lies not in avoiding conflict, but in being able to navigate it with awareness, empathy, and an open mind. There comes a point where the simple joys and effortless connection seem to be overshadowed by tension, misunderstandings, and unresolved issues. The enemy that seeks to weaken the bond between two people doesn't always arrive in the form of external threats like infidelity or betrayal. Sometimes the enemy operates in a more insidious manner, through division. Division is often the greatest enemy because it isolates, separates, and leaves individuals to fend for themselves, even when they're physically together. It can come into a relationship quietly with no dramatic argument or confrontation, and yet its effects can be deeply destructive. The real danger is how easily division can creep in and go unnoticed until it has taken a firm hold, causing both partners to feel emotionally distant, misunderstood, and disconnected. Division might feel like a minor thing. Perhaps it starts with small arguments that never seem to get resolved. Or maybe it's the accumulation of little things, neglected needs, miscommunications, unmet expectations that slowly create emotional distance. This initial feeling of it's not a big deal can quickly turn into something more severe if not addressed. What begins as a difference of opinion or a disagreement over small issues, when left unchecked, starts to erode the core of the relationship. The initial lack of resolution fosters a subtle but growing sense of separation, and over time, both partners may begin to feel like they're not on the same team anymore. They may even find themselves working against each other instead of with each other. One of the most damaging aspects of division is how it can build walls between two people who once felt like they were in perfect harmony. The enemy behind division thrives on a sense of us versus them, where each partner feels more like an opponent than a teammate. Even the smallest differences of opinion, when unresolved, can spiral into a larger divide. It's easy to fall into the trap of seeing the other person as the enemy rather than the situation itself. The moment you stop approaching challenges as a team and instead start seeing your partner as the source of the problem, the relationship is at risk. This division doesn't have to be overt. It can show up in the form of cold silence, passive-aggressive comments, or simply a lack of emotional investment. It doesn't just affect how you communicate or how often you communicate. It begins to affect how you feel about each other. It's easy to forget the things that brought you together in the first place when you're caught up in the cycle of misunderstanding and hurt feelings. You begin to look at your partner through the lens of frustration rather than love, and your mind becomes clouded by a focus on what's wrong instead of what's right. You start to question their motives, assuming that their actions are born out of disregard for your needs, rather than recognizing that they may be dealing with their own emotional struggles. This lack of empathy creates a further divide where both people feel increasingly isolated, even though they're still in the same relationship. The enemy also capitalizes on your ego. Ego is powerful. It thrives on being right and avoids vulnerability at all costs. When division begins, the ego steps in and says things like, "I shouldn't have to apologize," or "They're the one who started this, so they should fix it." Ego's primary goal is to preserve its own sense of superiority and protect itself from feeling exposed or wrong. This is where many relationships get stuck, because once ego is in control, communication breaks down. Apologies become rare, misunderstandings fester, and resentment builds. Ego doesn't want to admit weakness or take responsibility for its part in the issue. Instead, it creates a cycle of prideful detachment, making the other person feel as though their needs, feelings, and desires are unimportant or irrelevant. Another key aspect of division is how it influences the way partners handle conflict. When division creeps in, conflict often becomes the battleground. Instead of conflict being a constructive tool for growth, it becomes a point of contention where each partner tries to win the argument rather than seeking mutual understanding or resolution. The conversation shifts from "how can we solve this together" to "how can I make sure I'm right and they're wrong." This is a dangerous shift because it turns everything into a power struggle. And when one or both partners start to view the relationship as a competition rather than a collaboration, the foundation of the relationship starts to crumble. The enemy also uses division to magnify the differences between you and your partner. It whispers, "You're too different, you'll never understand each other," or "This is too hard, maybe it's not meant to be." Over time, these small thoughts take root, and before you know it, you're questioning everything. What was once viewed as a charming quirk now feels like an irritating flaw. Small disagreements that once seemed trivial are now viewed as insurmountable obstacles. The enemy exploits this by making the differences between you seem like a reason to stay apart rather than an opportunity for growth and learning. In reality, it's often the differences that make a relationship stronger if both partners approach them with respect, curiosity, and a willingness to understand each other's perspectives. The key to overcoming this division is to recognize it before it takes hold. Being aware of when the relationship starts to feel more like a battleground than a sanctuary is the first step in preventing division from deepening. You have to be intentional about creating space for open, honest communication and making the decision to put the relationship above individual pride. It's important to remember that your partner is not the enemy, even when it feels like they're opposing you. The real enemy is division itself. And the best way to fight it is through unity, humility, and a shared commitment to resolving differences. When both partners put in the effort to communicate openly, listen without judgment, and work toward a common goal, they create a powerful bond that no external force can break. Unity doesn't mean agreeing on everything. It doesn't mean avoiding conflict. What it means is that even when differences arise, both people are committed to working through them together as a team. That's the ultimate defense against the enemy that wants to divide you, a relationship built on trust, empathy, and mutual respect. Emotional neglect can feel harmless or even imperceptible. A busy week at work, a period of personal stress, or the constant demands of everyday life can leave both partners feeling drained and disconnected. These small moments of emotional disengagement might not seem significant in the moment, but over time, they begin to accumulate and take a toll. The lack of quality time spent together, the absence of deep, heartfelt conversations, and the failure to acknowledge each other's emotional needs can cause both partners to feel unimportant, unseen, or unheard. Eventually, this emotional gap grows larger and it starts to create distance, even when both people are physically present. Without conscious effort to nurture the emotional connection, the relationship begins to feel more like a routine or an obligation than a source of love and support. What makes emotional neglect particularly dangerous is that it often goes unnoticed until it has already caused significant harm. Both partners may feel like they're doing their best, But because their emotional needs aren't being met, they begin to feel lonely and unfulfilled in the relationship. In many cases, one partner might feel emotionally neglected, but doesn't communicate it out of fear of causing conflict or appearing needy. The other partner, unaware of the growing emotional distance, continues to operate on autopilot, thinking that everything is fine because there's no outward tension or disagreement. This lack of communication creates an even larger gap where both partners feel disconnected, but neither knows how to fix it. Eventually, they may begin to withdraw from each other altogether, thinking that the relationship has simply run its course. The enemy behind emotional neglect often thrives in a culture that prioritizes productivity and external achievements over emotional well-being. People become so focused on getting through the daily grind, work, responsibilities, family obligations, that they forget the most important element of any relationship: emotional investment. This constant go, go, go mentality leaves little time or energy for the kind of emotional nurturing that a healthy relationship requires. In the absence of intentional emotional engagement, partners may start to feel like they're not enough for each other, or that their needs are insignificant. The feeling of being emotionally neglected can lead to frustration, resentment, and even emotional withdrawal. It creates a situation where both partners feel like they're putting in effort but not receiving the kind of emotional support and connection that they truly crave. The danger of emotional neglect is that it doesn't necessarily cause a dramatic breakup. Instead, it creates a slow erosion of trust, intimacy, and affection. As emotional neglect continues unchecked, both partners may begin to feel emotionally starved, leading them to seek fulfillment elsewhere, either within the relationship through passive-aggressive behaviors or outside the relationship through distractions such as work or social media. This, if not addressed, can ultimately lead to the demise of the relationship, even though the partners may still love each other. The key to counteracting emotional neglect is to prioritize emotional connection and make it a regular part of your relationship. This requires intentional effort, time, and communication. Both partners need to recognize that emotional fulfillment is just as important as physical or financial stability. Emotional neglect isn't something that can be ignored for long without consequences. Therefore, it's crucial to establish regular check-ins, create space for meaningful conversations, and make each other feel valued and heard. Simple acts of affection, such as a thoughtful gesture, a heartfelt compliment, or even taking time to listen to each other without distraction, can go a long way in fostering emotional closeness. Overcoming emotional neglect requires more than just small gestures. It requires a commitment to being present, not just physically, but emotionally as well. This means being open and vulnerable, sharing fears, desires, and dreams, and being willing to listen when your partner shares theirs. Emotional connection thrives on mutual understanding and the willingness to empathize with one another's struggles and triumph. When both partners invest in the emotional health of their relationship, the bond between them becomes stronger, more resilient, and more fulfilling. Acknowledging and addressing emotional neglect early on is essential. If one partner feels emotionally neglected, it's important to communicate this openly and honestly. Avoiding or suppressing these feelings can only lead to further frustration and resentment. Instead of letting the gap widen, address it head-on with empathy and understanding. When both partners are committed to recognizing and addressing emotional neglect, the relationship becomes more than just a shared living arrangement or a routine. It becomes a sanctuary where both individuals feel truly seen, loved, and cared for. Emotional neglect is a silent enemy, but it is not an insurmountable one. By prioritizing emotional intimacy, being intentional in your actions, and consistently investing in each other's emotional needs, you can protect your relationship from this silent threat. It takes effort, but the rewards, a deeper connection, more meaningful conversations, and a stronger emotional bond are well worth it. In the end, emotional neglect is not just about the absence of affection or attention. It's about the absence of the emotional connection that allows both partners to thrive together, to grow together, and to love each other fully. And when you create a relationship where both of you are emotionally fulfilled, you create a partnership that is capable of weathering any storm. In conclusion, the enemy that seeks to destroy your relationship often operates in subtle, unseen ways. It doesn't always present itself in obvious conflicts or dramatic events. Instead, it thrives in the quiet spaces, the moments of emotional neglect, the unnoticed misunderstandings, the building of walls between you and your partner, and the internal struggles that go unaddressed. When we fail to recognize these enemies, they begin to erode the foundation of our connection, leaving us feeling disconnected, misunderstood, and even alone within the relationship. These forces are not insurmountable. The key to protecting and strengthening your relationship lies in recognizing these challenges before they take root and making the conscious decision to work through them together. Communication is paramount. Being willing to express your feelings, to listen, and to understand your partner's perspective. Emotional connection requires consistent nurturing, intentional effort, and vulnerability. When you stop seeing each other as adversaries and start approaching challenges as a team, you shift from a space of division to one of unity. By focusing on emotional intimacy, addressing insecurities, and confronting your inner fears, you can build a relationship that is not only resilient in the face of adversity, but one that grows stronger with every challenge it faces. Relationships are not static, they are dynamic and they require ongoing attention. The real enemy is not your partner, but the emotional barriers, misunderstandings, and unresolved issues that grow when we let them fester. By staying committed to one another, by recognizing the power of empathy, and by continuing to invest in the emotional health of your bond, you create a relationship that can withstand the trials that life inevitably brings. In the end, the greatest defense against the enemy that seeks to destroy your relationship is a shared commitment to understanding, respect, and love. This is how you protect your connection and allow it to flourish.